Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be talking about Capricorn Relationships Part 2. And yes, this does apply and pertain to the Sun, Moon, and Ascendant. Anyway, people, first up is, some of you may have remembered the first series I did on the zodiac signs and relationships, and those videos were pretty much about the 12 zodiac signs and specific relationships with them, and that was which would be connected with the probable signs on the house cusps in solar and natal charts for those signs. Now, this is more general and generic as far as relationships go for the zodiac signs and how they may act in relationships in general. So anyway, as far as this video goes, Capricorn Relationships Part 2, first thing up is, Capricorn can be can have a very stern and serious disposition, and this may come out very strongly in their relationships. Of course, they can, if you're connected with a Capricorn, they may have a very hard time showing a jocular and whimsical side in their connections. Remember that the zodiac sign Sagittarius often falls on the 12th house cusp in a solar natal chart for Capricorn, so there is a reason for that. 12th house is about restrictions and limitations. But what you can count on in a Capricorn is that in a relationship situation, whether it is an intimate relationship, significant other, or a close friendship, is that they could be very consistent. They may come across, though, as somewhat cold and callous, though, and sometimes even downright undemonstrative. Now, I had a Capricorn Sun boss that I had worked for one time. It was at a retail store. And, I mean, there was a time, I mean, he showed a very, and to me, a very cold and callous side from what I heard about him anyway in this situation. Is that apparently there was somebody came in, a trucker or what have you, and he got electrocuted somehow in the store, and he had been laying on the ground, and the boss, apparently the Capricorn Sun boss, came by and said, you know, we need to move this body, we got work to do. Now, that is a very negative manifestation of the sign. Most Capricorn people, Sun, Moon, Ascendant, I don't think are that cold, but they are, they can be somewhat inhibited in showing their emotions until you really get to know them. Then they may release them privately with you or what have you. Now, the thing about Capricorns you got to understand if you're connected with one is that even though Capricorn is not a fixed sign, they're everything but in terms of their temperament. They could be very intransigent and unwavering and unchanging. And I think a lot of this, at least you kind of know what to expect with, you pretty much know what to expect with them because their temperament can be very much the same day to day. And I think a lot of this is connected with the fact that they are the opposite sign of Cancer, because Cancer, of course, could be very fickle, moody, and temperamental, and you may get a new disposition with Cancer based on the signs that change as far as the moon goes, changing signs. So with Capricorn, though, it may be difficult to play, like say if you're just being whimsical, you're trying to play a practical joke on them, because they are so serious in nature, whether you might want to use phony handcuffs, whoopee cushions, fake spiders, or what have you. They are ones that really have a hard time dealing with jokes and humor. Now, Capricorns, too, I mean, they are very orthodox and conventional. You might have a hard time trying to get them to try something new, whether it's like a Wi-Fi doorbell or what have you. Because they're often, a lot of times Capricorns will just simply stick with the true and the tried. But one positive I will say with them in a relationship situation, I mean, Capricorns could be very industrious and hardworking, and they could often work laboriously to keep a relationship intact, even during times when it's going through trials and tribulations and difficulties. Capricorn can be that sign that will do whatever it can to keep it going. They may not quite have that patience like Taurus does, but they're I don't see Capricorn as being far behind. Capricorn could be very disciplined, and they often, if you're in a situation with them and you're in, say, an argument with Capricorn, Capricorn can often be very disciplined and articulate things very carefully, so it comes out somewhat tactful and diplomatic, but they are ones, going back to them being very disciplined. They will often hold back when necessary. And the thing about Capricorn too is that the thing I've noticed with them, they could be very good in terms of information technology. If you have some kind of problem with your computer, they often are ones that might help you troubleshoot it. And they also can be knowledgeable about matters connected with the skin and the teeth, because those are connected with the body parts anatomically with the zodiac sign Capricorn. So I think that has a lot to do with it. Now, the thing about Capricorn too is, being ruled by Saturn, they often can be somewhat melancholy and despondent, and sometimes the connection with them, you might be a little bit depressing because they could be very negative and pessimistic. And the thing about it too is interesting that Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, many of you may have heard of him. He's a bodybuilder, actor. He was in wrestling. I don't know if he's still in wrestling or not, but I know he at least had been in wrestling. He has a Capricorn moon, and he had recently come out at some point and said that he was combating depression. And it's not really much of a shocker when you're talking about, the moon in Capricorn, and of course the moon in Capricorn is in its detriment. And even when you have anything, especially like when you have a planet, whether it's in its exaltation, dignity, its detriment or fall, I believe it can be more pronounced. And I mean, with him, it obviously comes out strongly. And with and really the thing about Capricorn is, Capricorn of all the zodiac signs would probably incline more towards depression because of the Saturn rulership. So I mean, sometimes in some cases you could have, I mean, Sagittarius, for example, is not really compatible with Capricorn, given it's an adjacent sign. I see it as somewhat neutral, but sometimes Capricorn needs that energy from a sign like that, or even Gemini, which could be effervescent and very vivacious. Somebody around, even though the sign might not be compatible by sign, those are the signs like them could be ones that could actually, in certain ways, in terms of making maybe the mood more positive for Capricorn and seeing a positive light on certain things, that they actually may be beneficial, at least in that respect, even though they may not be compatible astrologically speaking. Now, the thing about Capricorn too is Capricorn males, they could be very, I mean, some of them could have a fatherly image on others, and Capricorns in general can be like a mentor to others. And it's interesting that some people have seen me as like a fatherly image to them. And I mean, I don't have, many of you may know my three major Sun, Moon, Ascendant. None of them are in Capricorn, but my Saturn conjuncts the Ascendant, and my Taurus Ascendant is in the Capricorn Deacon and Dwad. So maybe that has something to do with it. But Capricorns can come across, I mean, the males can come across as fatherly, and I think a lot of it has to do with the sign Capricorn and the Saturn rulership being connected with older age, and those are, I think that has a lot to do with it. Capricorns can often be much more mature beyond their years. And if you're like a Capricorn family, if you have a member of your family that's a Capricorn Sun, Moon, or Ascendant, they could be very responsible and be able to take on more responsibilities than the average person their age in many instances. Now, also too, if you're, let's say, Capricorn, a friend or a significant other or what have you, can actually be very advantageous to you in many instances in terms of business, because they are ones that can have very good business acumen, and they often are just naturally made to just they really have often a connection for business, can be very astute in business matters, and they may be able to help you formulate ideas for businesses based on what your strong attributes and strengths are. So Capricorns in that sense can be beneficial that way. The Capricorns also can have a very no-nonsense like nature and disposition. Going back to Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson with his Capricorn moon, I've talked previously in other videos that how zodiac signs, or I should say how actors and actresses can often be really drawn to roles on a conscious, sometimes unconscious level, perhaps, that correspond with their astrological energies. I think Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson may be no exception. And in some of his movies, I've seen him with a very, like no-nonsense type personality and demeanor, very tough, kind of nature. And I think a lot of that is that Capricorn moon energy being projected in those movies. Now, and the thing too is, if you're in an intimate relationship with a Capricorn, well, a source of frustration or consternation may be the fact that they don't readily show their emotions, going back to them sometimes being undemonstrative, or at least coming across that way. They really often will not open up emotionally to someone until the relationship really strongly evolves, and they are able to release it. I think the difference between, like, say, water signs and earth signs as far as the emotional element goes. Now, of course, water signs collectively, I see them as the most emotional, obviously. But what it is that I think the difference is with the earth signs. They're not as frequent and they're not as emotionally exuberant, of course, as the water signs, but they're the emotions are more protracted and sustained, I think, with the earth signs, though, when they do actually come out. Now, the thing is, going back to how Capricorns and knowing them, they can be very much more mature beyond their years, and this could help if you're in a connection with one that's a younger person. Now, as far as NBA superstar LeBron James goes, he's Sun in Capricorn, and when he came into the NBA, he was only like 18, 19 years old or something, and I think he had grandiose expectations, of course, and he handled the pressure, I thought, exceptionally well. And the thing about it is, which of course really makes it easier, like in that situation, perhaps with his teammates at the time and the coaches on the team. The thing too about Capricorns as well, if you're connected with one, they could often deal with an emergency or crisis situation exceptionally well. I don't see Capricorn being nearly as unflappable or poised as Scorpio, but probably not far behind in terms of dealing with those kind of situations. Whether it's a tornado coming or what have you, Capricorn can often be counted on to be very calm, collected, and cool in those situations. And the thing too is with Capricorns as well, they often, if you have a Capricorn as a manager or boss, they often can be very good at that because they are just naturally fit for that position. Some of them in a very negative manifestation, maybe somewhat downright ruthless or even tyrannical in some instances, but they often make really the best bosses around because they just seem to naturally have that ability to be in that position of authority. Many of you may have remembered, sports fans out there, the late great New York Yankees owner George Steinbrenner, who has a Capricorn ascendant, may have been seen as somewhat dictatorial, but he was one of the best owners around, and really he had fired and rehired manager Billy Martin a number of times. And the thing about it is with Capricorn energy, I mean, they can come across somewhat cold and callous, but I think they do have that soft spot somewhere, but it's just hard to really find it. Now, George Steinbrenner also had his sun sign in Cancer, so that might have played a role in that little soft spot. It just was hard to penetrate maybe his Capricorn facade and get to that soft spot, but it would come out, I think, every now and then, and it could very well have been that Cancerian energy. Capricorns, too, if you know them, they can often admire strength and can may respect those that may exhibit it. I had a Capricorn sun and a moon friend one time, or at least one time said to me, like, "Oh, I'm proud of you, Eddie, because in instances if I had stuck up for myself." Because Capricorns can often admire strength of character and will often respect you if you are someone that will stand up for what you believe in. And the thing too, Capricorns as well, if you're in, say, an intimate sexual relationship with a Capricorn, the sex may often be premeditated. Capricorn is arguably the best planners of the zodiac, the taskmasters as well. And they're often can be counted on in sexual situations to take the precautions, as Capricorn being an earth sign, and the fact that they like to prepare, plan ahead. They will take their use due diligence and use their contraceptive device or what have you. And can be counted on to consistently perform, so to speak, as well as Capricorn, of course, is very consistent. And you could also count on Capricorn to be reliable often if you're in like a shared account situation, shared resources situation. And Capricorns, of course, can be laborious workers and also can do their part, because of that, can do their part in a relationship to keep up with the bills and paying their share. But the thing about it is, if you make Capricorn an enemy or adversary, Capricorns of all the signs, I think, because they're connected with the 10th house of reputation, they could be very proficient, I think, in harming one's reputation. And I mean, they are of all the zodiac signs, I mean, and do things to ruin your, reputation perhaps, and bring you down in terms of your standing somewhat with others. And the thing about Capricorn too, Capricorn being as premeditative as they are, that may exasperate some more spontaneous signs like Aries, Aquarius, or Gemini, for example, because a lot of what Capricorn does is about what's being planned, and they might come across as too premeditative and really about calculating things, having everything planned, many things planned out, and that might annoy some more spontaneous zodiac signs. And one last thing I want to get to before I close with this. I thought it's interesting going back to how I believe that actors and actresses can at least can consciously, if not at least subconsciously, be drawn to roles that fit their astrological energies and nature. You look at a Chris Maloney on former, he was used to be on Law and Order, I guess it was SVU, I believe, along with another Capricorn rising lady that was on there, that was an actress. I don't know if she's still on there or not, but Mariska Hargitay, I believe the name is, and they both have Capricorn rising, and their ascendants are both at 15 degrees Capricorn and make a very tight conjunction with each other. And I mean, Capricorn energy, of course, is about working within the parameters, often being very orthodox, working often within the law. And really, I mean, with them, I mean, they both had showed very stern, serious dispositions and demeanors on that show, very single-minded and purposeful. And they were, I mean, they really exhibited a lot of that Capricorn energy. And it's no wonder they were partners on the show, given that they, I mean, it's almost like they were meant to have that near indelible connection on the show, given that their ascendants, which is the physical body, and per outer demeanor and personality were both almost exactly conjunct each other. So anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment for Capricorn Relationships Part 2. Stay tuned next time where I'll be talking about Aquarius Relationships Part 2. Two things I want to get with you on before I head out. Firstly, the stars may impel but do not compel. And secondly, never isolate any single astrological element, aspect, planetary placement, position, configuration, influence, or what have you, and make analysis of a person astrologically speaking based on this alone, because astrologically speaking, the person is the sum of all their components in their natal chart and not just one. Until next time, people, stay well.